Hello and welcome. This is Kara. Today we're going to be talking about masterboards. Masterboards are such a fun way to play with collage, but when you add mixed media techniques, that is where the magic happens. In this video, I'll share 5 ways you can elevate your masterboards and transform them into something special, like this tag. Here are the 5 completed masterboards that I'm going to use for these techniques. I made these for the Scrap Gilt to Scrap Gold video, plus I made another one off camera. Alright, the first technique is stamping. For today, I'm using a black permanent ink. However, any permanent ink in any color will work. Maybe you want to coordinate with your masterboard, and maybe you have blues, and so you want a blue ink, or maybe you want a contrasting color. I chose black because this neutral background will really help make the black stamping pop. And this background also has a coat of glue over the papers, and this is important when we go into a later technique which uses the inks. If I didn't have this coat of glue, you'll see later that my ink will run, my stamping will run, and we don't want that. We want our stamping to stay permanent and stay put. And then you can just kind of decide when you think you have enough. Okay, that looks pretty good. Okay, so then you could stop here, right? And then you could cut it up and make your different tags, or you can take it to the next step. All right, our second technique is stenciling with inks. So I've pulled out a couple different distress oxides. Any ink will work for this, and I picked a stencil that I thought would kind of coordinate with the background or my masterboard, and my masterboard has a lot of greens and it's botanical, so I thought this fun floral stencil would work. And I'm just going to go in every which direction, because remember, you will be cutting this up to make ephemera with, so you are only going to get to see bits and pieces of these stencils. So it's more like a background kind of, ooh, what's that cool thing in the background? But it does level up your masterboards. All right, and don't be afraid to add more than one stencil, more than one color. I know I'm going very monochromatic with these masterboards, but you could use different punches of color and different contrasting colors, and then that will add even more interest to your masterboard. All right, the third way we're going to level up our masterboards is with using texture paste, our stencil, and a re-inker. So for this, I'm going to use my Distress Ink re-inker. That's a mouthful. And I'm going to mix it with a little bit of my opaque texture paste. You can try this with clear texture paste. It just would still allow you to see the paper behind it. Opaque, you're not going to be able to see anything. So I'm using, I can't remember which blue, but a blue inker, and just a barely even a little bit. I could have even gone less than what I did here. And then we're going to mix it up with a palette knife, and then you'll see that we have this really fun blue that we can now use on our masterboard. All right, once your color is nice and mixed, you want to then take your texture paste and push it through the stencil with your little spatula. If you feel the color is too dark, you can add more of the texture paste and it will help lighten it up. This is just a great way to give a pop of color as well as texture. And you can also mix and match your colors. So here I'm adding some green to my white texture paste, and then I'm going to add some of this also to my masterboard. And I just think it looks really, really fun. All right, number 4, we're going to use paste with ink and spray ink. So we're adding the paste again, and then we're going to let that dry. And then this time, once it's dry, we're going to use our ink. All right, so I'm going to use my dauber to apply some ink to my number 3 that I had put through the stencil. You can also use these brushes and apply it that way as well. Another thing I could have done that I forgot is to lay the stencil back over the area and then use my brush or my dauber, and then that would have prevented me to get ink on my background. And since this background doesn't have a glue layer, the ink is going to be absorbed into this paper. And you can also see that right here where I'm pointing, that orange reddish area is a background that I did with inks, and it's absorbed through the texture paste. Another way to add some color to the texture paste is to use a spray ink. So I'm going to go ahead and spray over my paper in my splat box, hopefully to avoid messes. And then I'm going to add some water, and that will kind of help move some of the ink around. Now this background again doesn't have a glue layer, so you'll notice that the paper is absorbing that red. If I really didn't want my paper to turn red, I would have had to have added the glue layer, and so I could have taken or removed, lifted that ink off of my page. And then after I spray some water, I can then lift some of it up with a paper towel. But you'll notice the paper on the left now is stained with red. And the paper on the right, where I really didn't spray, isn't stained as much. Again, it just really depends on what look you're going for. So I'm going back and I'm spraying more on the texture paste that I've added, adding some more water, and I'm going to do the same thing. I'm going to remove some of the ink in the areas on the paper that I didn't want, and to try and leave the color on the texture paste. All right, I just quickly wanted to show you the difference between using a background that has the layer of glue on top and spraying with the ink. When you start to spray over a paper that has the glue, it then will start to have the ink bead up, and you can really see that once I start spraying the water. See how it's beading up? It's not soaking into the paper. So that means I can take my paper towel now and remove more of that ink if I wanted to. You can also dry it like this and then it will stay. But if you want to have more control of how much ink you have on your masterboard and how much you have on your paste, having that layer of glue and then the paste will really allow you to pull away more of the ink on your masterboard and leave it in the paste area. All right, number 5, we're going to add some instant coffee to our masterboard. This masterboard, I added some paste to it as well, the opaque paste, and it has turned a little bit of yellow, again, because some of the background pages had yellow ink and it's absorbing that. So I'm just going to take a paintbrush and I'm going to go over my masterboard and the areas with paste and just paint on the coffee, and then this will give it a vintage kind of feel to the masterboard. All right, let's take another look at the masterboards now that we have elevated them with our different techniques. They're all dry and they're looking awesome. This one again we did with the paste and the coffee. That one I did off camera. This one I did off camera, but I added some coffee to it. Really like it. And then the next one I added just some gesso and some coffee to it to kind of tone it down a little bit. And here's when we did the stamping, the stenciling, and spraying the ink. I'm showing how the colors really kind of popped in the stencil. Really cool. And then this one, I did the stenciling with ink, and then I also went back and used some of the coffee over this one as well, and it looks really cool with the stained papers. And then here is our red one that we did where we sprayed over the page as well as used our dauber. All right, so now let's take this red background and we are going to turn it into a tag. To go with the numbers that are on the Masterboard, I went ahead and stamped a number 5, and then I'm going to use glitter. Oh my goodness. I'm going to use glitter on this number 5 to give it some sparkle. I'm just going to use a little collage medium and paint it on, and then put the glitter on and hope I don't make a huge mess. All right, I cut out a fussy cut flower from the red palette, and I also added it to some of the file folder just to make it a little more sturdy. I inked it. This is very random, but I think I'm going to do something like this. I don't know why the 5 is front and center, but it is. And then I pulled out some other things that have numbers on them, and I think maybe we could put these around on this tag. So you can see this will be like this, something-ish. I like that coming off of here. Maybe under. Maybe off the thing. And then I have this pink one. I kind of like that to kind of go up there. Maybe this one back here. All right, I think-ish. I think that looks pretty good. All right, and then I have some eyelets that I want to add to the top. I need like that. Some black ribbon to add. But yeah, I think that's pretty fun. It's a little bit different than what I usually do. Okay, so what do you think of the 5 ways to elevate your Masterboards? Come on back next Friday. I'm going to take my Masterboards that we worked on, and I want to make some coordinating sets so that we could have ephemera that coordinates, and you could just use the coordinating ephemera in a journal. Pretty fun. Alright, so that will be next Friday, and don't forget the blue palette kit, which is right here, I think this is it, is going to be live on Monday, and I will have a kit walkthrough plus a little project, so I hope you come on and join me on Monday. Okay. As always, I hope you have a wonderfully crafty day, and check out the next video. And also, if you liked this video, if you give it a like and subscribe, that would be wonderful. All right, bye-bye.